This happened late one night on the way home from a convenience store. The ghost of a woman was clinging to the rails of an apartment, trying desperately to look through the curtains of a first-floor window into the well-lit room inside. She was pale and thin, with long hair to her waist, and wearing a white dress with puffy sleeves and a ribbon on the back. Her face resembled Oiwa-san's, and there was a faint smile on her lips. It was clear at a glance that she wasn't in her right mind. She was the perfect example of a Showa-era ghost, and I found myself thinking how rare that was these days. But then suddenly, it hit me. She wasn't see-through. She had substance to her. That wasn't a ghost. That was a real live person. I ran away from there as fast as I could. Hey guys, I'm your host Tara A. Devlin, and welcome to this week's episode of Kowabana, true Japanese scary stories from around the internet. In case you missed it, Toshiden Exploring Japanese Urban Legends Volume 4 is now available. Once again, there are a host of new legends to explore, both horrifying, bizarre, and otherwise. And of course, a new season of the podcast to go with it. That started just recently, so if you haven't checked it out yet, it's available right now. So I was thinking about what topic might be nice to cover for Halloween, and when it comes down to what people fear, what truly deeply terrifies us, well, a lot of people say the same thing, right? People. Other people scare us. Nothing is more frightening than what another human being is capable of. So, let's celebrate this year's Halloween with some very human horrors. First up, a young man's aunt is, well, oddly comfortable with complaining about her husband right in front of him, and nobody ever stands up for him. Why? Because they all fear said aunt. But what happens when this young man finally tells his aunt what everyone has been keeping inside all this time? Find out in Here She Comes. My aunt, my mother's older sister, is a bit of a weirdo. Well, to put it simply, she's the type of person who would blurt out stuff like, "Sometimes my dead boyfriend calls to me," while eating as a family. Then, around 2 years ago, she started constantly going on about how she wanted to get a divorce. And so, when that aunt's daughter got into university in March, we all went to my grandparents' house on my mother's side to celebrate. At first, things were going great, but then my aunt started going on about wanting a divorce again, right in front of her husband and kids. Now, her husband is a really great guy. It would take too long to go on about why, but believe me when I say he really is a great, upstanding guy. And so, with their daughter running her mouth like that in front of everyone, my grandparents tearfully apologized to her husband for how rude she was being. And so, she was talking about wanting a divorce again as we were all celebrating, and everyone was like, "Oh great, here we go again." Everyone tried to ignore her, but when I looked at her daughter, my cousin, she was almost in tears. Like she was so embarrassed that she couldn't stand it any longer. Her daughter worked her ass off and was a genuinely good person, something you don't really see a lot of these days. And knowing what she was like normally, it honestly pissed me off to see her upset like that. My grandfather's face also turned red and he looked like he was about to blow his top. God damn it. If nobody else is gonna do something about this, then I will, I thought. "Hey auntie, what the hell do you think you're doing? You're embarrassing everyone," I said. On behalf of everyone in the family, I let her have it. Even now, I still remember the look on her face as I said all that. At first, she went bright red, but then all the colour drained from her face. And as soon as I was done, she screamed at me like, What the hell would a kid like you know about anything? Honestly, I was kind of terrified, but seeing everyone in the family looking at me like, finally, someone said something, thank you. Well, it gave me the courage to keep going. And as I kept telling her off, her face went ashen and she started swaying on the spot. Thinking things were about to go south real fast, suddenly my mother stepped in. "I think that's enough for now. Yes, I think we should go home," she said, urging us kids to leave. I should note that our house and my grandparents' house were all on the same lot, about a 10-minute walk away. And so, my older sister, younger brother, and our cousins all left and went to play some games together. I apologized to my cousin over and over for what I said, but instead she said, "Thank you." And my siblings were like, "Well said," with a laugh. So honestly, I felt pretty pleased with myself. And a short while later, my mother returned as well. The first thing she said, and even today, I still remember exactly what it was, word for word. "Get your things together and head to your grandfather's house, right now." Huh? What? What's going on? Her low tone was completely different to how worked up my siblings were. We then spoke in the hallway so my cousin couldn't hear. "After you left, your aunt completely lost it. It wasn't just a tirade of abuse. She said she was going to kill you. She refuses to listen to anyone, so for now you should spend the night at your grandparents' house." She was talking about my grandparents on my father's side. In the background, I could hear the music from the Momotaro Dentetsu game the others were playing. It was the first time I had heard it sound so dark. I wanted to joke about it, but I just laughed and said, "Seriously?" and then went back into the room. After that, my uncle came back. A bunch of stuff happened, and around 11 p.m, my uncle and cousin left my aunt behind to go home. By 3 a.m. or so, my parents and brother had fallen asleep, while I sat up with my sister and watched a movie. The lights were off by that point. Then, in the garden, I heard the sound of someone walking across the gravel. Of course, my sister and I both immediately knew who it was. "It's Auntie." We turned the movie down so we could hear better, and she was walking in a circle outside the window to my room. My sister, who also laughed it off at first, suddenly turned dead serious. "I'll keep her there, but you need to leave through the back door and head to the garage right now. She's not playing around," she said. Panicking a little, I started shoving some underwear and such into a bag. I grabbed my car keys, wallet, phone, and some cigarettes, and then stood by the back door. Then, my sister and I both went outside at the same time. The garage was around 7 meters away from my room. If things went badly, I might run into my aunt on the way over there. And so, I hid in the shadows and waited until I heard my sister's voice. "Auntie, what on earth are you doing at this time of night?" I could only hear my sister's voice, but she seemed to be getting further and further away. Every now and then I heard laughter as well. My aunt always loved my sister, so I used that opportunity to run to the garage, and then I tried to start the car. "All right, let's get out of here." But as I put the car into reverse and turned the lights on, suddenly I saw my aunt standing there with a horrifying look on her face. A chill honestly ran down my spine. I mean, she was standing there holding a work shovel. I slammed on the accelerator and reversed out of there like a bat out of hell. When I arrived at a nearby convenience store, I immediately phoned my sister. No way she had a shovel! But the only person she wanted was you. She was laughing and chatting with me. Everyone staying quiet while you chewed her out ended up being the right call after all, my sister said, laughing. If she was going to carry on like that with everyone, then I wouldn't have done something so stupid, I said. But honestly, I was still worried about my family. So for the rest of the night, my brother and sister took turns keeping watch. With a weapon on hand, of course. When I arrived at my grandfather's house in the morning, I was shocked when I saw my car. It was covered in scratches all over, meaning my aunt had been in the garage too. A few days later, my aunt was admitted to a hospital in Kanagawa for a while. I heard she's out now and doing better though, supposedly. I've visited various haunted locations throughout my lifetime, but honestly, living human beings are the most scary things of all. The student in this next story attends a university at the top of a mountain. This university has an old building that students use for individual study at night, but the doors are prone to breaking and students often need help to get out. But what happens when one young man finds someone he's never seen before in one of the rooms? Find out in Unknown Woman. This is a terrifying story that happened while I was at university. The university I went to was at the top of a mountain. It was pretty far from town, and the nearest convenience store was about a 10-minute drive away, down a zigzagging mountain road. And so, considering the circumstances, most students didn't stay behind late at night, unless they had club activities or lab work to do. However, there were roughly 10 or so buildings that made up the university, and one of them, the music building, was often full of students, generally from the music course, who practiced things like the piano or violin late into the night. The music building had around 50 or so individual rooms, and students often had their favourites. Like, Eiko often used room 24, so one of my dumb seniors always used room 23 to be next to her. One night, I was practicing my instrument in the music building. It was around 9:30 p.m. The last bus left at 10 p.m, so by that time, most of the students were gone. Because we were at the top of a mountain, it was tough to get back down if you missed that final bus. Just as I was thinking it was about time for me to head out as well, I suddenly heard a loud bang somewhere nearby. I thought perhaps somebody dropped their instrument, so I didn't think much more of it as I left the room. But then I heard it again. Ah, that must be it, I thought. The music building was pretty old, so several of the doors were broken. If you attend a school that's well maintained, then you probably can't imagine it. But at our university, if you were unlucky, then you might get stuck in a room because you couldn't open the broken door. And so, that sound had to be someone trying to open a stuck door. I had saved a friend who got locked in once before, so I was sure that had to be it. I made my way towards the sound and looked through the window in the door. As expected, somebody who looked like a student was trying to open the door on the inside. "Hang on, I'll open it for you," I said, grabbing the doorknob and twisting it as hard as I could. "Oh, thank you so much. The door got stuck as I was trying to leave." I had never seen this person before. I generally knew all the people who stayed behind late in the music building, but before me stood a woman I didn't know at all. Was she from another university? As a rule, people from outside the university weren't allowed to use the practice rooms. but I didn't think it was a big deal. "Hope your practice went well," I said. But then, for just a moment, like honestly just a second, her expression warped and turned fearsome. Then it went back to normal, like I had just imagined it. "This is my favorite room," she said. "Oh, is that so?" A strange sense of unease and dread filled me as I spoke. Something wasn't right with this girl. What on earth was that look on her face just now? But there was something even stranger than that. "I've been using this room forever, but I was surprised when I suddenly couldn't open the door." What did she mean this was her favorite room? "Seriously, thank you so much," she said, and then she walked away. In the end, I couldn't bring myself to question her. This room was room 31. A senior I knew well always practiced here. He was a hard-working guy who always stayed behind until late. But now, there was an unknown woman in his room. I was beyond curious, so I decided to call him about it right away. Surprisingly, he answered immediately. It seemed he wasn't even at the university. He attended his first lecture for the day, but then he didn't feel like it anymore. He gave all sorts of vague answers. Then I asked him about that woman. He was silent for a moment before he answered in a heavy tone. "Don't say anything about this to anyone, but yesterday, someone threatened me." Apparently, the previous night, when he got home to his apartment, where he lived alone, he found his letterbox stuffed full of papers. They were all printed with the same thing. "Don't come to school." And so, creeped out, he didn't go to school, and instead spent the day walking around town. He thought about going to the police about it, but in the end decided not to. "Who is that woman? Do you know her?" "No, I have no idea. But after what you told me just now, I'm even more afraid. At any rate, I'll try to figure something out." But that conversation was the last time I ever heard from him. His apartment is now empty, and his family hasn't heard from him in over a year as well. He disappeared off the face of the planet. And naturally, I haven't seen that woman again since then either. One of that guy's friends apparently spoke to his family several times after that, but he still hasn't returned home. They broke the contract on his apartment because it was a waste of money to keep paying for it. And although they didn't expect much, they put out a missing persons report as well. This guy was involved in 2 different music circles at university, and he had numerous friends outside of school as well. So it was strange that nobody had heard from him or seen him. Who on earth was that woman? And even now, I still have no idea what she was doing in that practice room. Jealous exes are the worst, and as the young man in this next story is about to find out, some of them don't seem to ever forget, even when you have long moved on. Find out what happens in Jealous Girlfriend. I had a girlfriend who got deeply jealous of everyone, and one day I brought up the topic of us breaking up. She was a kind, gentle person, but she was oddly negative about things and got lonely easily. But it wasn't until we really started dating that I realized just how odd she was. Every time my phone rang, she would bombard me with questions about who it was. On my days off, she insisted on being with me. If for some reason we couldn't be together, like work, then she would contact me every 10 minutes. She just wanted to control every single thing I did. She also wouldn't let me speak to any women other than her. I couldn't even say hello to my neighbors. And if the waiter at a restaurant was a woman, then my girlfriend would always order for me. I was close to my older sister, and I later learnt that the reason I stopped hearing from her was because my girlfriend was harassing her as well. Obviously, this was all a bit much, so I visited her parents to speak to them about it. Our daughter kind of lost it when her previous boyfriend dumped her. She's calmed down quite a lot since she started seeing you. She might be a little weird sometimes, but please don't discard her so easily, they said. They were implying that I shouldn't do anything, like breaking up with her, to make matters worse. One of my friends was a police officer, and I spoke to him about it as well. But apparently, they didn't really involve themselves in relationship matters, unless someone actually died. But of course, I couldn't keep ignoring what was going on. There was nothing left to discuss. If I stayed with her any longer, I was going to lose my mind. And so, I went to her apartment and tried to discuss breaking up with her in a gentle, roundabout way. But as soon as I did, she jumped at me with a terrifying look on her face. I tried desperately to hold her back and reason with her, but I was so overcome with fear as she tried to scratch my eyeballs out that I threw her off me. She tumbled to the ground, but then she jumped up and ran to the kitchen. A chill ran through me like I'd never felt before, and while she was in the kitchen, I left my shoes behind and ran outside. I jumped up and down as I waited for the elevator to arrive, but then she flung her apartment door open and burst outside as well. She was barefoot and holding a knife. Seeing that, I gave up on waiting for the elevator and ran for the stairs. I ran down the stairs so fast I almost fell, but I couldn't escape her voice following behind me. Before I even reached the car park from the first floor front gate, she caught up to me. I could hear her ragged breathing as she ran as fast as she could. Seeing that I wouldn't be able to escape, I quickly jumped down as she got close and swept her legs. She fell face first on the asphalt, and as the knife dropped from her hand, I kicked it away. Then, before she could get up, I ran to my car, fumbling for my keys. I jumped inside and started the engine almost before I even sat down. I reversed, turned, and was just about to speed out of there when suddenly the driver's side door opened. A small, pathetic scream escaped my lips. I couldn't look her in the eyes. I'd once looked directly into a garbage incinerator as it was going, and the intense heat forced me to turn away. It was just like that now too. I just slammed my foot on the accelerator and kept going. She clung to the door, running alongside the car as she screamed my name. But soon the car was going too fast for her and she let go. It appeared she'd torn off a fingernail doing so, as there was now blood on the inside of the door as well. Ignoring the speed limit, I cried and cried as I drove through the dark city streets. That very same day, I packed my bags and fled to my parents' house. But I never saw her again after that. When I didn't hear from either her or her family, I was scared that maybe she was dead. But my police officer friend checked up on her and she was alive and doing just fine. As more and more time passed without incident, I grew hopeful and returned to my apartment. But when I opened the fridge to make dinner that night, I found a small parcel inside. A bad feeling washed over me, but I opened it. Inside was an envelope with a letter inside, and the shredded remains of the shoes I'd left behind at my girlfriend's apartment. As soon as I saw that, the fear I felt that day came rushing back once more. My heart pounded wildly, and my mouth went dry with a bad taste. Trying to calm my ragged breathing, I nervously opened the envelope to read the letter. But instead of the letter I was expecting, something hard and small, like petals, scattered in my hand. They were 10 fingernails torn from the root bed. Screaming, I threw them to the ground. Panicking, I tried to call my friend, but my house phone wouldn't work. Looking closer, the line had been cut. A strange groan escaped my lips as I picked up my mobile phone that was charging, and at that very same moment, it rang. It was from my ex. I threw the phone and fell to the floor like the nails I'd just discarded. Behind me, I heard the front door unlock and start to open. Hurry up and get out here. Going into the mountains to pick mushrooms, wild vegetables, bamboo shoots, etc. is a popular pastime in Japan. But the old women in this next story might sadly soon discover that, even far from civilization, there are dangerous people hiding everywhere. Find out why in Delicious Rare Mushrooms. Last autumn, when I lived in the countryside, I visited a nearby mountain to pick some mushrooms. I parked at the foot of the mountain, and there's a roughly 3-hour course you can follow that leads you to a place with honey and bunaharitake mushrooms. About an hour into my walk, I passed 3 women who looked to be in their early 40s or so. Judging by their accents, they were from the Kansai area, and as we passed each other, I caught a glimpse of what was in their bags. They appeared to be ashen night and moonlight mushrooms. Lots of them. To make it perfectly clear for those who don't know, both are poisonous mushrooms. Moonlight mushrooms in particular have been known to kill people. Hey, are they stupid? What the hell is wrong with these ladies? I thought, turning to chase after them. What are you planning to do with those mushrooms? I asked. Hearing a sudden voice call out to them, they looked at me suspiciously. What are we planning to do with them? Take them home, of course, one of the women said. Just as I expected. When I tried to explain that they were poisonous, another woman interrupted me. I knew it! It's just like that man said. You won't fool us. You want our mushrooms, don't you? Apparently, they ran into a man on the mountain earlier that day, and he told them about some delicious rare mushrooms they could pick. But he also told them, because they were rare, people would try to fool them by saying they were poisonous, so they could steal them. I was astounded. What on earth was this man going on about? They were most definitely poisonous mushrooms, and anyone with even the vaguest knowledge would be able to see that. At any rate, I tried to convince the women, but they wouldn't listen to me at all. At least check them in a reference book, I said finally. But all I could think about was how there were crazy people in the mountains as well. The boy in this next story has a helper that comes to his house after school because both his parents work. But one day, his grandmother suddenly tells him to hide and not come out no matter who calls for him. Why? What's really going on? Find out in Old Lady Sasama. When I was a child, both my parents worked, so there was a woman by the name of Old Lady Sasama who often took care of me. Perhaps she was just unlucky, but she struggled to find work, and she survived off what she could grow in her own field. Her job at our house was to make me food when I got home from school, clean the house, and take my unwell grandmother to and from her hospital visits. One day, old Lady Sasama was oddly not at home when I got back from school. Instead, my grandmother, who was usually laid up in bed, was drinking tea in the living room. Old Lady Sasama was generally always there when I got home, so I asked my grandmother where she was. "She hasn't come by yet today," she said, and then she took me upstairs and shoved me into a room, as though hiding me in there. "No matter who might come after this, you mustn't come downstairs. You hear me?" she then said, handing me some snacks and a bottle of juice. "What do you mean, no matter who might come?" I asked my grandmother. She looked slightly troubled. "No matter who might come," she repeated, pressing a finger to my lips to keep me quiet. Then she closed the sliding door. I quietly sat underneath the heated table and watched TV. And then around 6 p.m, as it was starting to get dark, I heard old Lady Sasama's voice. I was on the second floor, but it was a rather tiny house, so it was easy to hear people at the front door no matter where you were. "Is Yosuke-kun not home yet?" she asked. I thought about going downstairs, but then I remembered what my grandmother said. I remained under the heated table and listened to them briefly chat downstairs while I watched TV. A while later, old Lady Sasama returned. "Is Yosuke-kun still not back? He's not at Mihamaya either." This was a candy store I often spoke of. "No, he's still not back yet," my grandmother answered. "He said he was going to play with his friends, so I think he'll be back late today," she lied. Even though I was just a kid at the time, I was vaguely aware that my grandmother was hiding me, and so I held my breath and hid under the table. And by the time old Lady Sasama returned yet again, the sun had completely set and it was fully dark outside. "Is Yosuke-kun not home yet?" "No, he's not. You don't have to worry about cooking for him today, so please go home," my grandmother replied. My parents returned around 8 p.m. My grandmother slowly climbed the stairs and told me it was okay to come out now. Dinner that night was much later than I usually had it. Apparently, they found old Lady Sasama's dead body later that night in a bamboo grove. The note she left behind said she had nothing left to live for and that she was lonely all by herself. When I think about how that lonely woman with no relatives was searching so desperately for me that day, it both chills and saddens me. The boy in this next story loves to go crab fishing after school, but one day he runs into a man there he's never seen before. A man with a terrifying story. But is his story true? Find out in Master. I heard this story from my father. When he was just a child, my father always went to a nearby river on his way home from school to catch freshwater crabs. One day, he went to the river alone, like he always did. Being a hot summer's day, it was rather humid and muggy. At first, he tied some squid to a bamboo pole and used that as bait, but soon the heat was too much to bear, so he went directly into the water to catch them. As the sky started turning red and he figured it was about time to head back, an old man suddenly passed by and approached him. "Young man, you are in the river," he said. My father nodded, and the old man continued. "Listen, young man. Children are often killed at this here river." My father was shocked and told the old man he'd never heard anything about that. "Well, of course," the old man said, "because I am the person in question, and I've kept my actions a secret all this time." Apparently, my father didn't try to run away. When I asked him why, he said it was because he didn't feel any murderous intent from the old man. The atmosphere instead felt calm. "So you don't kill people anymore?" he asked the man. "Why would you say that?" he replied. "Well, you don't seem very scary now," my father said. Then the man appeared rather proud as he spoke. "Ah, well, I am a master at making children feel at ease, haha." Then my father suddenly took off running. When he told his parents, my grandparents, about what happened, they immediately alerted the police. That old man still hasn't been found. My father said I was truly lucky that he ran away. After all, if he had been killed, then I wouldn't be here right now. And finally this week, a boy has a terrifying outing with his uncle who's acting strangely. Will he make it out of this one alive? Find out in My Freeloading Uncle. This is a story about the time my uncle almost killed me. When I was in elementary school, my uncle lived with us for a while. He got fired from his factory job, got kicked out of his apartment because he couldn't pay rent, and with nowhere else to go, he just lazed around our house day in, day out. He had no income, and all he did was sleep all day and drink cheap sake. But he was kind to me, and sometimes bought me ice cream or took me fishing or bug collecting, so I liked him a lot. About 6 months after he moved in, late one rainy Saturday night, my father and uncle got into an argument downstairs. They sounded quite upset, so I turned down the radio I was listening to hear them better. And suddenly, there was a loud bang, like a door closing, and then my uncle stomped up the stairs. I panicked, thinking he was making his way towards my room, but then the sliding doors to the room next to mine opened. Nervous, I jumped into bed and, before I knew it, I fell asleep. The following Sunday, my parents went out shopping, so I was home alone with my uncle. I pretended I didn't hear anything the night before, and I ate the karaage my mother prepared for me while I watched TV around lunchtime. I heard my uncle leave the family altar room and then come down the stairs. "Uncle, good morning," I said, feeling a little nervous. "Hey." "Oh, that looks good," he said, sitting down to eat some of my karaage. "Tsutomu," not my real name. "Do you want to go fishing after this?" he asked. I wanted to cheer him up, so I agreed. With 2 fishing rods in hand and a bucket full of tackle and bait, we set out to a nearby waterfall basin we often visited. The water was higher than usual thanks to all the rain the night before, and the stream churned violently, looking the colour of coffee-flavoured milk. "Doesn't look like we'll be able to catch much today," I said. "I don't know. Do you still want to try?" my uncle answered. "At times like this, you tend to actually get the best catches, like eels and such, you know?" He then started walking over to the basin. "We don't have to go that far, do we?" I thought. But I followed after my uncle, who was walking at a brisk pace in silence. "How about here?" he said, stopping at a tall rock above the basin. "Tsutomu, let's fish here." "Come on," he said, helping me up. He grabbed me under my arms and I crawled up. "Well, how's the water? Think we'll catch anything?" he asked. I stared into the swirling, muddy waters below. "I can't see anything, let alone fish," I replied, looking for any movement below. After staring at the water's surface for a bit, I realized my uncle hadn't replied. "Uncle?" I said, turning around. Just moments ago he had been standing at the bottom of the rock, but now he was directly behind me, both arms raised at roughly chest height. When I saw him standing there like that, I froze. There was no expression on his face, and his eyes were blank. It was like time stopped, and all I could hear was the cry of the cicadas. I stared into my uncle's eyes in silence, unable to do anything else. Sweat trickled down my face, and my heart pounded wildly as I stood frozen on the spot. And my uncle stared back at me, his eyes listless and his hands still in the air. I don't know how long we stood there like that for, but suddenly the bushes behind my uncle moved. We both seemed to come back to our senses at the same time and turned to look. It was an old farmer I knew from nearby who didn't seem to have yet noticed us. "It doesn't look like we'll be able to fish today, so let's go home," I said, walking past my uncle. Once I was a short distance from the waterfall, I started running as fast as my legs would carry me. I felt like my uncle would be right behind me with that same look on his face if I turned around, so I kept running forward as fast as I could. After running quite some distance, I realized that I was bawling like a baby. Instead of going home, I went to my parents' store instead. They ran a restaurant at the time, and I waited there until closing time. My uncle didn't come home that day. The following night, my father contacted the police, and a few days later, they apparently found his body in the water. I never mentioned anything about visiting that basin together, and his death was chalked up to an accident whilst fishing alone. But I found a note in my uncle's handwriting in the tackle box I'd brought back with me. "I'm taking Tsutomu with me," it said. A huge thank you and shout out to this week's Kami tier members, Elihu, Emerald, and Kenneth Kawamoto. It's thanks to your support, along with everyone else, that I'm able to keep doing this show, so thank you very much. Don't forget to check out Toshiden, Exploring Japanese Urban Legends Volume 4, out right now. And check out our merchandise store at kowabana-shop.fourthwall.com. And if you'd like to chat about this week's stories, come and join us in the Kowabana Discord. You can find that link in the description or on kowabana.net. You can also check out our Patreon at patreon.com/TaraADevlin for exclusive bonus stories and extras, or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/KowabanaJapan for all sorts of Japanese horror you won't find anywhere else. Thanks guys, stay safe, and I'll see you again next time for even more Kowabana. True Japanese scary stories from around the internet. Want even more scary stories? Head over to kowabana.net for new translations every week. You can also join our Patreon for exclusive stories you won't find anywhere else. Head over to kowabana.net now.